Wendy believes incorporating physical and psychological safety into daily operations is the key to reducing injuries and illness. Wendy has a degree in psychology and sociology, her MBA, and an advanced certificate in psychological health and safety in the workplace. She teaches for the University of Fredericton and British Columbia Institute of Technology. She loves to share her knowledge and experience with others. She volunteers with Special Olympics and is active in the gym, on the water, and on the slopes. So with that, I'd like to welcome her on to the stage. So there is group work involved. So if you don't have somebody to talk to, I'm going to ask you to move to where there is somebody to talk to. Pardon me? Well, I can come around and then pick on people instead if you'd rather. Okay. So thank you for having me here today. And okay, so are you here because somebody told you you needed to be here for stress and anger management? Because it's like this is right after lunch, right? And this is the time where your phenomenal chai pudding that you had is settling in, and you could have gone to learn about what's going on right now, something with biohazards or something. But how was the emergency preparedness piece this morning? Good? Nice. That's a big chunk of what we do as well. What I wanted to do today is talk about, I'm going to introduce myself differently from the exciting bio that they always get you to do. We're going to talk about stress, we're going to talk about anger, and we're going to talk about de-escalating. And Calvin emailed me a while ago and she said, it's like people are just sitting on a powder keg because everywhere you go, there's a sign that says, you have to be nice to my team here. You can't yell at our staff. If you're violent or if you're inappropriate behavior or if you're, if you raise your voice, you'll be asked to leave. Have you seen those signs wherever you go? The biggest one I know of is in the hospital. And in the emergency room, I came in from Maple Ridge, and I know at Ridge Meadows Hospital, a good friend of mine is a nurse in the ER, and they set it up so, I mean, I understand, you all understand that when you go there, it's a triage system, right? And if you just have the sniffles, you are not as important as the guy that comes in who's having cardiac arrest. That's just the way it is. But they'll take your name, they'll get all your information, and then they'll sit you down over here. And then after a little while, somebody will call you and you'll go in and they'll do an assessment, see where you're at, and then they'll have you sit over here. So you think you're moving and you're getting closer. And then they'll do something else and they'll move you to this other room. And then they bring you to another room, but you still haven't seen a medical professional and you've been there for probably a very long time. But because you're moving from place to place, there's less likelihood that you're going to scream or yell at anybody. I don't know if it works, but that's the perception. But everywhere you go now, it seems to be you have to be nice to our people. So one of the reasons why you need to be nice to your people is this is me, and that axe was my third try. So I have good aim, apparently. I am executive director for AgSafe Agriculture Association. We do health and safety for agriculture throughout the province. I do teach psychosocial hazards for the University of Fredericton and represent health and safety for the agriculture industry throughout the world right now, quite honestly. We won an award for cultural diversity, and I'm not a sharpshooter, but when I learned how to shoot a gun not that long ago, I was almost as good as with the axe, which is kind of freakish. But it's something I've been told that if it's a zombie apocalypse, you probably want me on your team. When's the last time has anybody been yelled at in the last week? How about in the last month? Yes. Yes, counts with your spouse, with your children, anywhere. Who's been yelled at by their boss? That's not, if you don't want to put your hand up because you're shy, that's okay. Or if you don't want to share. I was yelled at by my boss repeatedly, week after week after week. And he was the director of human resources. And when he screamed at me, it was in front of a room full of human resource managers who all hung their heads in gratitude that it wasn't them that were being yelled at. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens with stress and anger and where it comes from. But that experience repeated over time caused me to have a physiological response. And I was hospitalized with respiratory distress and went through a battery of tests where they found out there was absolutely nothing physically wrong with me. It was my body's response to psychological trauma. And ever since then, I've had an extreme interest in this type of information. That was before bullying and harassment legislation came into place with WorkSafe BC, because had that been the case at the time, I would have had, let's get this picture of me off. I would have had a fully compensable WorkSafe claim and been paid for my time off, but I wasn't. But I was screamed at on a fairly regular basis, and it wasn't very fun. And when I brought it to his boss, who was the chair of the board of directors, they said, "Yeah, we know, but what can we do?" So I left. Okay, so here is a picture of a thermometer, and I would like you to please draw one of these on a piece of paper in front of you. You don't have to color it in, but it's not a difficult. I see there's lots of pens and there's paper, so please draw one of these. You will not be evaluated on your artistic ability. I stole this from Google Photos, so my artistic ability is 0. And at the very top, I'd like you to write "about to explode." And at the very bottom, I'd like you to write "centered and calm." And in the middle, you can write whatever descriptors you think are suitable for the other 3 that are between centered and calm and about to explode. All good? You're all checking out everybody else's thermometer and seeing if you're the best artist at your table? Then I'd like you to put a star on that thermometer with where you're at right now. All right. So just keep that in mind as we chat. So we're going to talk about stress. You may not be able to control every situation in your life. I know a lot of us think that we can, or certainly would like to, but you do have control over how you respond. So raise your hand if you think stress is bad. All stress. Okay. So it's pretty common. So generally speaking, okay, where am I supposed to point this? There we go. So we use the word stress typically when we feel that everything has become just too much and we're overloaded and we don't know if we can cope with all the pressures, right? So, but some stresses are good, believe it or not. Some stresses are bad, but some stresses are good. They get you going. If you didn't have any stress in your life, how boring would life be? A lot of things would feel really, really pointless. But when your stress starts to undermine your mental health or your physical health, then that stress is bad. So there's lots of different interpretations, as you may know. So for some of you, some of us, I should say, the what you're dealing with on a daily basis, for some people, that's super easy. And you don't think that you are experiencing any stress. And then suddenly your body tells you that you are. For others, they can cope with that same amount of stuff that's going on and not experience stress at all. So getting a promotion could be stressful. Breaking your bone could be stressful. How you cope with that particular situation, that usually determines whether it's stressful for you or not. Because what happens is you size up the situation that's in front of you and then decide if it's a threat, decide if you have the tools to deal with it and the resources that are needed. And if you feel that you effectively do have the resources, then you can move forward and that's probably not overly stressful for you. But if you don't, then it can be more of a challenge and that can cause you to have a stressful response. So what are some of the things in life that you think cause stress? Just shout. Any ideas? After lunch, you need to talk. Forgetting your password every single day, right? What else? Being the IT guy who has to deal with the password request, brilliant. You don't have them all stored somewhere on your phone? I have like 2 screens of passwords now and they keep having to change. What else causes stress? Relationships can be very stressful. Very stressful. Sorry, what else? Finances can be very stressful, especially right now. Right now, my interest rate was 1.45%. Oh, it will possibly get raised 3 times in a year. When ridiculous. Yeah, now it's over 6. What else? Fear of the unknown. Wow. Okay, that's a big one. So, most commonly, right, we have major life events, selling or buying a home. Who would be stressed if they were me right now? Right? They had a thing. So, I read a thing a long time ago that the 2 biggest stressors of the people's fears were public speaking and death. And they flipped between 1 and 2 year over year. And I'm one of these really weird people. I like doing this. I put my glasses on, so you're all really blurry. That helps me. But it's, I think it's fun. So if you walk out, I will find you. Major life events, selling or buying a home, moving, changing jobs, getting married, getting divorced, having kids. Are those stressful things that can happen? Right? All of those things can be particularly stressful. What about your daily events like traffic, right? You have to be here by 9 o'clock in the morning. You get in the car, you live in Maple Ridge. There's an accident on number 1. See, somebody's leaving. I'm going to find him. Right? So traffic, the thing to remember when you're tied up in traffic, how many of you have wished that whatever had happened? I mean, you don't say bad things, but I remember being on the New West Side and I lived in Surrey and there was somebody threatening to jump off the Patella Bridge, which is a horrible, horrible, tragic thing that somebody is in that dark of a place. There were people yelling that they wanted him to jump because it was 4 o'clock and they needed to get home. How sad is that? I think that's against the law now. I'm not sure. But how pathetic is that? Somebody else is having a way worse day than you being late. Often there's a lot of different types of personalities. Some people are really good at multitasking and others just can't. They have to handle one thing at a time. Your nutrition, how are you when you're hungry? Do you get hangry? Right? That's when I snap at people. So I've had lunch already. But if you're hangry, those are the best commercials, those O. Henry ones. People, that can cause a lot of stress. Or if you're skipping meals, I mean, there's not a lot of days that coffee doesn't solve a lot of problems, coffee in the morning and wine at night. What about your physical environment? Do you live in a cubic farm? Or do you have a personal office, a private office? People coming and going all the time. Personal interactions, depending on what's your level of confidence. What if the CEO, if you're not the CEO, if the CEO walks into your office and asks you a question, does that cause you stress? Potentially? Or what if they just bypass you and don't even say hello? So and then there's a lot of internet or organizational factors that have to be taken into play because people arrive at work as a whole person, right? You cannot check your personal life at the door, much as many employers would like, and just be the worker at that point in time. Everything that comes from home comes with you, and everything that comes from work, unfortunately, goes home with you as well. Yes, you cannot discuss the stresses, but if you've had particular stresses on any given day, you can't just leave it. It's part of you. It's in your head, no matter what. So when we look at the different organizational factors that come home, if people have incompatible role expectations. So if it's not really, really clear cut what the expectation is that you are supposed to be performing at work versus what the expectations are from your boss, that can cause some significant stress for you. If people disagree or if the expectations are just unclear, if your job description entails with 3 things and then the other duties as required, like most of us have, it can be very complex and difficult when you don't know really what's expected of you at that point in time. What about how many of you have children? Yeah. And if they're little and they can't be left at home alone, mine are all grown. If they can't be left at home alone, somebody has to take care of them. How do you decide who's going to stay? What do you do for work? Do you have an employer that understands that this child needs to be taken care of and either you're going to be late or you're not going to be able to be there that day? Can you work from home? It blows my mind the whole time when COVID happened and March 15th we had to shut our office and schools closed. And my team, we were considered essential service. So, and I'm sure yours all obviously was considered essential service. You had to work, but you had kids that had to be home. They couldn't go to daycare, they couldn't go to school. But then, if you're a parent, you were expected to school. So, you had to be a full time parent, a full time teacher, a full time worker, full time partner, and you weren't allowed to leave your house. And you all had to stay together all the time. And I have no idea how people did that. I really don't. I have 3 staff that have small kids, and how they managed is beyond me. So if any of you here had to do that, my hat goes off to all of you. But talk about stress. And I think the one good thing that has come from COVID is that we've learned how to coordinate work teams and work together when we are under extreme periods of stress, and we accept that the personal stress is as significant as the work stress can be. So again, who thinks all stress is bad? Not necessarily. Let's look at seriously, where am I supposed to point this? There we go. Today's workplace realities. So there are less people to do the same amount of work. There is increased job responsibility, increased accountability at work for each individual. There's a lot of restructuring that's happening, and that produces some job losses, unfortunately, and people are fearful that they are going to be the ones losing their jobs. There's a continuous need for training. The job market is shrinking. The workforce, well, it's aging. There's an absence of job accommodation strategies or options. Benefits packages are very generous. So why would I work if I can leave with great benefits? And so that increases workplace stress and stress-related disabilities. So those are some of the realities. What I would like you to do now is write down, take a paper again. You're going to have to do some sharing, so you might have to move. Write down all the things that cause you stress right now. And those of you who are joining us by Zoom, please do the same. Write down all the things that are causing you stress right now on a piece of paper. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes to get that all listed, please, or 4 minutes. Oh, got your list? Almost? So here's the sharing part. So if you're by yourself, I'm hoping that you'll shift and find with somebody. But if you're comfortable, I'd like you to compare lists with people at your table or with the person next to you and just have a look. You can read it or you can and choose the ones that you're willing to share or not. Those people who are online, if you could do that in the chat, that would be fantastic. So I should hear people talking now. All right, awesome. How many people found that others had similar stresses? Yeah. There's a lot of similar stresses, and if you're in similar roles, that would make a whole lot of sense. I wanted to ask, is anybody here from Maple Ridge right now? Yes? Because, pardon? No, not at all. I have where I my property, I have the wastewater, or I think it's the wastewater inspection station. So like there's a big tower and there's somebody that comes to my house every week to test it, and the generator goes on and all that. So super cool. And looks like I'm speaking with the mothership sometimes because of the big thing that's out in front of my house. But whoever it was, and if they were here, I was just going to say thank you because they used to visit with my dog every time and it was really fun, but she's gone. So okay. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about getting home too. It's not like Richmond though. That's just the worst. All right, so here's the stress piece. So we talked about stress. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. There is a sweet spot. So the key is finding where you are on the sweet spot. So when you experience enough stress to feel challenged and you feel encouraged and it's ready to, that gives you optimal performance. It can be at the bottom where it's just boring and life isn't fun at that point in time. There's nothing to keep you moving forward. But overdoing stress, that's when it can get involved. You can end up being very exhausted. You can get ill. And worst case scenario, end up sick and broken down. Stress can have positive effects. It can increase your motivation, it can give you a sense of challenge and something to look forward to, a renewed energy, give you some excitement so that you're not tired all the time. It can allow you to ensure that you're paying attention to detail and you have more accuracy. It's increased self-confidence and a sense of purpose and a goal. So there is a positive side to stress. On the other side, it is the number one, where am I? Did I skip one? Okay, wait, I went too far. There we go. The number one cause of workplace stress, I hate to tell you this if you're the supervisor, and this is the leadership stream, so I'm going to assume some of you are. That's the number one cause of stress in a workplace as a supervisor. So be aware that some of the stress that's experienced by your team, it may be because of you. Or if you're experiencing stress, it may be because of your supervisor. And you may or may not realize this, and it may or may not be intentional. Hopefully it's not intentional. But if a lot of individuals, they quit a job, they say now, you don't quit a job, you quit your manager. I mean, that's what I did. So if you're overstressing people, it's a good opportunity to have a chat. Stress can be a great imposter, as this says. There may be an undiagnosed depression underlying that has not been identified at that point in time. There could be individuals who are suffering with substance use disorder, unresolved emotional issues. I mean, you can read the list, and incredible insomnia. I know when I'm experiencing stress, the ability to sleep is pretty much gone. So, mind you, that's also with being old. Should I go too far? So the biology, the reason we have stress, our ancestors way back in the caveman days, they needed to go out and they were the hunters. And so they would get ready to go and maybe face that great saber-toothed tiger, and the stress level increased as they heard the rustling in the bushes, and it gave them the ability to have the fight or flight response, fight, flight, or freeze actually, and it released different hormones and cortisol and adrenaline and things like that, so that they had the ability to run as needed. Well, we don't have that anymore, but we still have the opportunity that when you start to get nervous or excited and the stress level increases, then the adrenal glands release the hormones, the adrenaline and the cortisol, and that's important. Your heart rate increases, respirations increase, and you're ready to fight, flight, or freeze. But it can also cause you to start to feel angry, or it can cause you to feel depressed. And stress is very expensive. We're not risking our life anymore to go get our dinner. We're not The hunter-gathering or the hunters is gone at this point in time, but it can be extremely costly, and the impact is very, very high. The sad part is that stress contributes to presenteeism as much as it does to absenteeism. Is anybody not familiar with presenteeism? Right? The guy is at work, but he's really not doing anything. They're just there taking up a space, and something's probably going on. And that can be more costly than them not being there at all. So it's important that you're aware of what's happening with the individuals. Is stress an illness, though? It's not a medical diagnosis. It is a symptom. So it's the body's response to prepare the body and the emotions for action, for flight or fright. So we all experience stress in some way, shape, or form. Every single day we experience stress, but we're not always sick. So we need to learn to address what the stressful situations are and how to move forward with it. But have you seen a note from the doctor that says off due to stress? Nobody has? Okay, good. If you do, you don't have to accept that, because stress leave is not an actual medical diagnosis. It does not exist in any contracts or any leave agreements, any union agreements, any of those things. There are a number of leaves that are available as I've listed them here, but it is not stress leave. That is not appropriate. They need to be, if you want a medical note to be off work, you need to have a physiological reason for being off work. And stress is not a physiological reason. It's a response to a situation, but it is not a physiological reason to be off work. But as we said, people used to quit their jobs and move on. Now they go on stress leave. Burned out employees require request long medical absences. They can't deal with work, but that's now a psychological issue. It's not a physiological issue. A highly stressed employee is going to be 20% less productive than somebody who has capabilities to deal with the situations that are going on in front of them. Stressed employees take twice as many days off as their healthier coworkers for any variety of reasons. So in my instance, I couldn't breathe. I had significant difficulties catching my breath and always felt like I was running out of breath, which caused me to be dizzy, which meant it wasn't safe for me to drive. It wasn't safe. And I had 3 little kids, so that wasn't helpful. But it was a real issue. So being home, it didn't go away. And then when I was home, I was off work for 8 weeks. And when I was home, nobody called me to see if I was okay. Nobody from work ever called me to see if I was all right. And when I asked them about it later, they said, well, we figured that if you wanted to talk to us, that you would call us. I said, well, you guys are working and you're super, super busy. Why would I call and disrupt you? And they said, well, we just thought that you'd call us because you weren't feeling well. So we didn't call to check on you. And I think that's one of the biggest things that if nothing else, if supervisors should always be calling to check up on people. If they're off for an illness or an injury or something, just call to say, hey, how you doing? We were thinking about you and hope you're okay. On that note, if it's a workplace related anything starting January 1st, if you're interested in more information, that will be a requirement per legislation with WorkSafe. The duty to cooperate and the duty to accommodate. So we can talk about that more after if you're interested. Is the stress leave employee sick? It's unlikely that stress caused it, but it can exacerbate pre-existing conditions. So people who have asthma, coronary artery disease, different skin conditions, ulcers, ulcerative colitis, diabetes, things like that, it decreases immune system. So the increased level of stress, which causes the increased level of cortisol and adrenaline in the body, can decrease the immune system. So it can predispose individuals more to colds and flus and things like that. It can lead to an increase in bad habits, smoking, alcohol intake, and then one of the other ones was retail therapy. I know lots of people that shop when they're stressed out and end up with a lot of Amazon deliveries over time. It can lead to mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and things like that. Mental illnesses that can cause some bodily symptoms, including pain. So symptoms typically in those cases, they're not faked, they're real, and they can definitely affect the activities of daily living. but there's going to be a lot of tests that people have to go through before anybody is diagnosed with a physical illness before or caused by stress. So how are we going to deal with it? Number one is identify the sources. You all made a list. So you have taken the first step towards identifying different sources that might cause you stress. Is it work? Is it your family? Is it your environment? Is it the commute every day? I can't imagine. I live in Maple Ridge, like I said. If I had to go to Richmond every day, you'd have to leave by 1 o'clock in the afternoon if you wanted to get home for dinner. It's quite a distance. But sometimes just recognizing that can be enough. If you are experiencing sleepless nights because you have a brand new baby, it's not going to be forever. But at the time, it can be exhausting and very, very stressful, I'm sure. Or if you are part of the sandwich generation with caring for elderly parents and small children at the same time, that can be a significant challenge. Not all stress is bad, though, so we need to see what you can handle. Having an open dialogue with your staff, what they can handle, what they can manage. Do they need a change in the environment? Do they need to have adjust? I don't know if everybody's working under a collective agreement and if this is an option, but can we adjust hours? Can we adjust days? Can we give staff more control over the speed with which they have to work, for example? There's a lot of different varieties on that. Ongoing staff development and education is really, really helpful. And then getting feedback from your employees. You know, if you're sitting under a cold vent all the time and that's causing you to be stressed and you don't want to go to work because it's constantly blowing on you, you need to tell somebody and probably it can be fixed. So why would that be such a big issue? So those kind of things. All right. What happens when stress goes unmanaged and it leads to anger? So one of the examples that I like to give, well, I'll do it after. What happens when, right, you get the person, and sorry, this is the best one I could find, and they start to yell and scream, and they yell and scream at you, and it's not a fun situation. So I'm going to ask you to make another list. So you don't have to share this one with anybody, but just I want you to think about the different things that make you angry. What makes you angry? Just come up with a handful and write them down. What really pisses you off? What makes you mad? What makes you want to scream or yell? Or I used to throw things. I was pretty good aim. What makes you mad? Really cool if it's something that you have to think about really hard because that indicates that it's not super easy to make you angry. All right. So when you've got a few things, next thing I'd like you to do is next to each one of those, write down the reaction that you already do. Right. So if somebody cuts you off in traffic and you lean on the horn and call them lots of nice names, write that down. That's just my example. Maybe that's what I do. Okay. Next, I'd like you to write down the reaction that you wish that you could do instead. So, for my example, somebody cuts me off in traffic. I lean on the horn. I list every single swear word that I know loudly. But what I wish I could do would be to just slow down graciously and say, wow, that guy's really in a hurry. When I threw a can of paint at my kid, probably would have been better if I, just walked away quietly, cautiously, went and had a timeout. I didn't hit him. He moved. I hit the wall. It was a long time ago. And it wasn't a full can. So the point is that think about the next time one of these triggers happens and think about what you indicated you wish you could do and just try and remember that. And then you won't have the negative response. Now, everybody has a balloon, correct? Can you please blow it up to the level of stress that you feel on the worst day? Did you not get a balloon? Blow it up to the point where your maximum stress. Don't tie it off though. Okay. Don't tie it off. I tied that one off. Okay. That was my other example. That was why that one's sitting over there. Okay. So now you've blown this up. This is letting go of your stress. If everybody does it together, it makes a really cool noise. Excuse you. That was fun. And I would ask that everybody clean up their own balloon after. All right, so we're going to talk about anger. Do you need anger management help? Were you unable to release the stress in the balloon and feel better? And now you're angry. Do you need help? Here's how we're going to find out. So, number one, do people tiptoe around you? Might be an indication that you need a little bit of anger management. What about you find yourself regretting what you've said? Right? And you go back and you go, I wish that had gone differently. And that's a very common situation in a lot of relationships. And hopefully you have positive communication styles that you're able to adjust that. What about if more than one person has mentioned that you may have an anger issue? That might be a good indicator that you might need some anger management help. If you feel you're surrounded by idiots, and that could be in any environment. So if that's the perception that you have, and I know it's not always an indicator of the need for anger, but if you couple that with the rest of the list, it might be something to think about. What if you just truly feel that life is unfair and nothing is working and going your way? Do you blame others for what's going on in your life necessarily? Do you find yourself yelling a lot or people ask you to stop yelling when you didn't think that you were? Maybe you might need to look at some anger management support. What about you feel frequent, very intense surges of rage? Is that an indicator? Have you been referred for anger management classes? And I tried to search for a good emoji or a good picture for this, and everything that came up was with Jack Nicholson and I'm Adam Sandler, sorry, with Jack Nicholson and Adam Sandler sitting on the plane when he needs to be referred and he's asked the flight attendant for something. And anyways, that was, so I had a good laugh out of that. But what about you've looked up online that you've needing anger management assistance. And a lot of the times, it's just that you've had such an accumulation of stress buildup and you've not been able to release it, and it comes across as anger. So, if you believe that there are some warning signs, then that's a good opportunity to take action. What do you notice about your body when you start to get angry? Do you start to pace? Maybe. Do you start to clench and unclench your fists? Do you breathe more rapidly? What kind of actions does your body take? What happens to you? Do your palms get sweaty? Does your face get flushed? Like, these are all things that are outside your control, because this is the internal piece, that the fight, flight, or freeze. This is the release of the different hormones that are happening. But what happens with your thoughts, and what happens as does your thinking start to change as the anger gets stronger? These are all things that you can start to pay attention to, and hopefully catch it before it becomes an issue. So I want you to go back to that thermometer. Doing this again. There we go. And take your thermometer out again and see where, right? What did we write down before? Different ones, that you're about to blow, and at the bottom. Where does this fit? Where does your anger level? We identified your stress level before, but now you can look at your thermometer and see where you are on your stress level. Just need your glass. Excuse me. All right, so what happens to your brain? Same thing as with stress. Ready for the fight or flight? It turns us into some impulsive decision makers. It helped our ancestors, but it doesn't necessarily help us. So people who get angry a lot, they need to grow their prefrontal cortex. And you've heard that part about young men. Their prefrontal cortex isn't fully evolved until, or developed until they're in their 20s. I know that when my three boys, when they were teenagers, they were horrible people. They were absolutely horrible people. And now they're three of the nicest young men you'd ever want to know. And they're 25, 28, and 30. And they're just super wonderful, wonderful people. But when they were between 14 and 19, it was not fun. Probably being a single mom, I'm sure didn't help, but it was a challenge. But now that they've grown and their prefrontal cortex is fully formed, it works well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can grow your prefrontal cortex. Does anybody meditate? I can't do it. But that can be really good for you. Reframing your feelings, creating stories that reframe an offender's actions. So the person that cut you off in traffic, if you just imagine that they just lost a child, which is a horrible thing to say, but that kind of makes you feel differently towards them at that point in time. So if you can imagine something that had happened to them that would really cause you to have a lot more empathy, then that can help you to deal with an anger response. Right? So constant chronic anger can lead to heart disease and heart attacks. And that's because of the release of the different hormones. So it's really important that you do something positive and something fun. Kalpna is a huge person engaged in exercise, a huge exercise enthusiast. She's not a huge person, she's very small. A huge exercise enthusiast. And that's one of the things that can really, it creates the dopamine response and can really help you to deal with anger. Okay. If you noticed, do you all, or do some of you work with members of the public? Yes, lots. Okay. So those signs that are everywhere about not, you can't yell at my staff. What if somebody comes in and is angry and is in a situation where they are starting to escalate? And are you brought in to intervene? Or, I don't know your specific situations, but there are ways when you notice if somebody is starting to escalate, you can see it quite often because they will start to yell potentially. Their body language, you may notice with here's a picture of the guy, but the redness in their face and the tautness of their muscles and the way they stand, and different types of things that might make it evident. So what are we going to do to defuse that so that it's not that the yelling and screaming doesn't happen and you don't have a situation that is now violence in the workplace, because we don't want to have to deal with that. So what we're going to watch for is we're going to try and defuse this situation. So looking at the behaviors and addressing their needs, choosing your words carefully, right? How many people stop screaming if somebody yells at you to stop screaming? It doesn't work. Yelling calm down, it doesn't work. So you need to be aware of your word choices and be familiar with what's going to help in that particular situation. Making sure that you're making eye contact and that you're not looking threatening. If there's a small person, a shorter person who's of smaller stature coming in and who's very upset, you don't want to send the 6'5", 250-pound muscle person out there to try and defuse that situation, because that's very intimidating. And that's just not going to be the biggest answer. You need to watch your posture, your facial expressions, and how you're going to deal with this person. More is done non-verbally than verbally, because by making that person believe that you're listening to them and that you're going to pay attention and listen to their issue, and not while not allowing them to get the upper hand, right? Setting appropriate boundaries, that's going to help to offset the situation. So you need to, if it's really evident that they're stressed and they're becoming very angry, we need to recognize the feelings that they're experiencing. If you judge their feelings and dismiss them as unimportant, you're not going to help yourself in dealing with this. It's crucial that you respect how they're feeling at that time. So when I worked at the school board office, we had a gentleman come in who wanted to see me specifically because I was the safety manager. And he began to scream at me. Had a lot of people scream at me. He began to scream at me because he believed that I had intentionally exposed him to asbestos when he was a contractor working on removing the insulation from a lot of the pipes under one of our schools, and that I had purposefully ensured that he was not made aware of what was there when he was coming in to do that. So he was very agitated. He was very angry. He believed this was exclusively my responsibility and my fault because he was now ill, and he just wanted to let me know. And the first thing they did was they brought one of the managers out of the office, who was a very tall, very broad-shouldered gentleman who just stood and listened. And I took this gentleman up to another room so that we could chat, and had my backup with me. And he just really wanted to be heard. But by standing and listening and understanding that he was really terrified, he was really scared that he was going to die. And it was important to acknowledge that his fears were real and his emotions were real. It was not my fault. The asbestos was put there in the 1970s. I didn't do it, and I didn't put him under the school to take it out either. And he knew that deeply. But recognizing that his emotions were real and that he was really, really scared was the reason, was the why he was able to talk to me, why he would listen to me. So recognizing that people's feelings are real when you have the conversation or when you listen to them is really crucial. Respecting their personal space, like I said already, with posture and proximity, but staying close enough that you can listen, but far enough away that you're going to be safe is one thing. Standing slightly off to the side a little bit is helpful, because then you have an escape route, but ensuring that you're not within their own space. You're not crossing their personal plane. If you stand up, you don't have to right now, but if you're standing in a line at the grocery store or at the bank or wherever, you're much more comfortable with somebody closer to you sideways than closer to you behind you. But if you were to turn around and be face to face with that person, you're going to naturally take a step back, because your personal space typically is more of an oval. So somebody can be behind you within a foot or so, but if you turn around and stand staring at them, that's why people all face the front on an elevator. Do you ever stand at the front of an elevator and turn around and look at everybody? It's fun. People get so uncomfortable. But that's personal space, because in front of you, your personal space is much, much larger, and it's reserved for people that you've invited to be in that space. So if you want to talk to somebody who's stressed and you want to try and diffuse them, face to face, you need to be, far enough away that you're not going to invade their space. So standing next to them and talking, you can get much closer. Try it. When you go down the elevator later, stand in the front of it if there's a bunch of people on it, and turn around and face the back. I know I'm weird, but I think it's fun. The more distressed this person is, the less they're going to hear what you say. So you really need to be aware of Are your fists getting clenched? Are you getting uptight? Are you getting tense as well? Or are you able to use really neutral body language to ensure that they can start to get calm? The tone of your voice is going to be crucial. This emotional brain thing, staying calm, staying rational, staying professional, is crucial. You can't control their behavior, but you have direct control over whether that situation is going to escalate or not. So you need to ensure that you can take that, right? Thinking in your own head that I got this, we're going to be okay, and everything will be manageable can be very helpful for you. What about how the person feels? Facts are important, right? But how they feel, that's why they're there. It can be really difficult. People don't like to talk about their feelings. It's a touchy subject, but you can listen carefully. In my case, the gentleman, he was so afraid because he was sick with mesothelioma, which still remains the #1 cause of workplace death in this province. So sharing things, saying things like, that must be really scary. Why are you so, like, why are they coming to scream at you in the first place? Do you get So you said you work with members of the public. Is there something that people come to scream about or that they're angry about that they want to vent about that's typical anywhere? Odor. Odor at wastewater treatment? Yeah, that kind of sucks, but I work with farmers, so road maintenance. So with road maintenance, so potholes aren't getting filled, my road's not getting plowed, and ongoing, what are you guys doing? Why aren't you helping? Yes. So that's a really great example. Another great example, right, with the odors from a wastewater, like right at Alex Fraser Bridge when you first go over that. I mean, so similarly to that, do you live near a farm? Anybody? Right? And you know when the dairy farmer has spread manure on the field because your entire neighborhood just reeks. We just call that the smell of money. But why aren't my potholes being filled? I had to pay more than $500 to replace a rim on my car because of a pothole, but I don't know where it was. So I'm not going to yell at you, I promise. So how do you manage that? What do you say to that person that comes in and is probably yelling at the person who's at the front counter who doesn't have the highest paying job of the group? How are we going to help them? How are we going to support them to understand what's going on? Right? There's so many understanding. Why is that such a big issue? Did they just have to replace a rim on their car? And so now they're really angry because that's cost them some money. And perhaps that was their grocery money for the week or the month or whatever it is these days. Is that their real issue? And so now they've taken the opportunity to come in and be really angry about it. The smell. What can you do about it? You can tell them, well, if they don't produce any smells themselves, then, well, I'm really sorry, but that's not how the world works. So when they come in to have those conversations, being able to keep them from escalating can be really, really helpful for you and for the people around you and for the individual that you're having to deal with. So recognizing that that's not really the issue, right? The issue is something greater, and finding out exactly what that is can be really beneficial. So knowing that it's you may get a better response that way. We want to make sure that you're not having any challenging questions because that's not going to be productive. If they try to challenge who you are, I want to talk to your superior, I want to talk to somebody else, you're not helping me, I need your boss, I need your manager, I need whatever. That's the opportunity to say, like, that's not the issue. I'm here to help you. I'm here to address your concerns. And let's go back to why you came here. What really is the problem? What's the issue that's going on? And then you can work together to try and solve the problem. But we do want to make sure that we're setting limits. Okay. So you have to set the boundaries. They can um, take the conversation in the direction that they wish, but they cannot be disrespectful. So ensuring that you have the boundaries set clearly and that they know what can and cannot be um, said. So, you can tell me, they can tell you that they're upset with how you're handling it and that they don't agree with what you're doing, but they can't tell you that you're stupid or things like that. It can't be a personal attack because this isn't about you. This is an issue that they want you to help them deal with. So, how are you going to fix that? Right? So, get them to stay and focus. But you need to make sure that you are choosing wisely about what you um, make as non negotiable. So, this example that I have, that's not the right slide. Perfect. This example came from healthcare. So, because this is all stuff from the Crisis Prevention Institute. So, if you have kids at home, for example, and you want them to ensure that they bathe every single day, and it's going to be in the morning, and you're going to do it before we go to school, but then they don't want to do that. And now you're all going to be late, and they're not going to get to school on time, and they're going to go to school and they're going to stink. Well, can I offer a different solution? Can the child say, I want to do this at night, or I want to come home at lunch, or I'm at school, whatever the case is? So you need to decide what your non negotiables are going to be. Because when you have an individual coming in who is angry and upset and you want to help to diffuse them, if you decide that this is the deal, this is how it's going to be, and that's something that's not going to be attainable, you're going to have a really difficult time ahead of you. So you need to make sure that you've set your boundaries appropriately. Let them have an opportunity to think about it. Silence sucks sometimes, but letting somebody have the moment, the opportunity to think what's going on, think about what you've said, redirect how they're feeling, and potentially address the situation in a different way, you may be able to allow them to come to some conclusions on their own. They might not be able to think clearly because they're upset. They're not thinking properly, right? Remember when you're hangry and how you feel? You're not your usual normal self and you're not thinking clearly necessarily. So give them time to think it through. Allow them to try and calm without yelling at them that they need to calm down because that doesn't work. That absolutely doesn't work. So there's a lot of different ways that you can address this. One of the biggest ones, always though, remember the zone, right? When you're having the conversation, having a supportive stance, which is a little bit off to the side, but still facing them, but you need to have an escape route. If they do decide that they are going to lash out, you need to be able to get away safely. Go back to your thermometer. Where are you at now on your stress? When you think about when you look at the different strategies of how you can release your stress, what I want you to think about, where do you carry your stress? Right? Do you know when you're stressed out specifically by the tenseness in your body? So the majority of people, and I know any massage therapist will tell you, in your shoulders and your trap muscles in here, they can just get so tight and so tense and so uncomfortable. And that can lead to jaw pain and headaches. If you sit at a desk all day and use a mouse, that doesn't help because you tend to do this, whether you realize it or not. You will have a tendency to bring your shoulders up as you get a little bit stressed. In your jaw, people who clench their teeth when they're stressed out, it can just cause that gives you pain. So stress will give you pain. Pain will make you uncomfortable. It'll make you angry. And that will end up causing you to not be at your utmost self. So it's really important that you address stress. So what are you going to do? You need to, you've heard them all before, exercise, right? Proper nutrition, get better sleep. Does everybody sleep 6 to 8 hours every single night? I'd love to know how. What else can we do that's better for our body to reduce the amount of stress that we're experiencing? Exercise is number one, believe it or not. And it doesn't have to be massive, intense exercise all the time. But exercise releases dopamine and endorphins, which naturally, it's the natural feel-good hormone. And I know the number of times that I have got up to go to the gym and just thought, I just want to have another hour of sleep. I really don't want to go. And then I'm so grateful after that I did actually go because you feel so much better. Good sleep is crucial. And if you're not sleeping well, there's lots of tips and tricks. I'd be happy to hear about them. What else can you do besides exercise to address your own stress? Remove yourself from a negative situation. That can be very helpful. What about ongoing stress? Get out in nature, which look where we live, right? This is the most beautiful. I just did about 2,000 kilometers last week through the Okanagan. Some of it's not so beautiful now. It's very black, which is very sad. But the mountains and the trees, it's incredible the impact that that can have on your brain and breathing in the fresh air and seeing the incredible mountains and the water. This is such a beautiful province. And, hiking through nature, now you've got the benefit of nature being outside of a stressful situation and also getting exercise at the same time. So having a nutritious diet, and I mean, I'm preaching to I don't want to be preachy, but proper exercise, getting out in nature, having a good sleep, staying away from stressful situations if you possibly can. All of these things can contribute to having less stress in your life, less cortisol, which causes or contributes, to atherosclerosis, which is thickening of the arteries, which can lead to heart disease, which can lead to a much shorter, less enjoyable life. So by taking care of yourself, you can reduce the stress, which can allow you to live longer in a positive way. And doesn't that sound like a good idea? Easier said than done sometimes, but it's really important. It's really, really important because you only get one life. And sadly, I learn far too often of people whose life is cut short. And I've been dealing with a few of those recently in the farming community. And it's not nice. Those people lost their lives unnecessarily. So you need to take care of you, and then you'll be able to take care of others by addressing your stress levels. It pays off for everybody. And I know we're scheduled to go for longer, but I really want to just leave it at that because I just hope you all have an amazing day. Thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it. Oh, absolutely. We have time for questions. Sorry.
If you have a question, maybe just raise your hand, and then we'll come to you with a mic. Any questions?
If you have questions regarding any of this or stress leave or the lovely Workers' Compensation Act or any of those things that I can help you with, disability management was one of the big things that I used to do a lot of too, but yeah.
If anyone's got questions, just come and raise your hand and I'll pass around the mic. Just so that our virtual attendees can also hear the questions.
Have you seen the wording of the new WorkSafe proposals for January?
Yes, a number of them.
Do they come with any directions for the poor supervisor that has to?
So a good question. So with regards to, there's a couple that are happening right now. They're still reviewing mental disorders at work. That one's still under review. And the current one that comes into play at January 1st is the duty to cooperate and the duty to accommodate. So a lot of the wording, the good part with regards to that is that it's going to be, the onus will be not exclusively on the employer. The employer and the worker must cooperate in communication with WorkSafe BC to help facilitate return to work or stay at work. So what it boils down to, so up to this point in time, up to right now, it's good practice to have an injured worker not just be off work if they're able to do anything. So having some kind of modified duty program available so that if you've got, because everybody's got a list of stuff that needs to get done, right? So if they're not physically able to do their full job, to be able to bring them back to work to do safely a meaningful and productive job. That's good practice right now. That will be regulated and required starting in January. But the worker will also have a duty to cooperate and can't say, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. Because it will be, and if they do say, no, I don't want to do that, WorkSafe can close their claim. So they're still working on some of the wording with regards to how to help employers and supervisors and workers to implement this. But that's the basic legislation. There will be a requirement to participate. So it's not a bad thing. I know one of my teammates on my Dragon Boat team, he's a plumber with his right index finger is broken, and he's quite angry that they want him to come in and do modified duties because he wants his finger to heal. But they can't offer him modified duties that would delay the healing of his injured finger or would cause him further injury, has the potential. So trying to explain how that all works, but it's good business practice because short version is that it's, your work life is often also a big chunk of your social life. So it's individuals' ability to stay connected with their workplace and the people that they spend a lot of time with. It's better for an employer because now you've got somebody there who's experienced and knows what they're doing and can support others who are fulfilling their other role potentially. You get more money if you're at work being paid your regular wage than being off on workers' compensation. So it's better for the worker. It's better for the employer because now their workers' compensation fees aren't going up. So it's intended to be, and it has been proven to be, a win-win. The thing they're changing now is that you're going to have to do it. It's not just a good practice. So yeah.
Any other questions in the room?
They're also starting to write legislation right now that you're going to be required to offer a psychologically safe workplace. How you legislate people to be nice, I don't know, but yeah, that's what they're doing. So thank you.
I think that's everything. I don't see any
No online
questions in the chat.
Okay, so please remember to scan out of the room. And the next session in this room is leveraging your team's diversity. So, and that starts at 3 o'clock. So you have a fairly decent break right now. This